Welcome to the Mike on Much podcast. I am your host, Mike Veerman. I'm here with my friend and trusted producer, Max Kerman. We also have our pop culture aficionado, Shane Cunningham, and Erica. Intern Erica is not on the dials this evening. She couldn't join us, but we're going to press forward, fellas. How you guys been? We're not going to jump right into topics. I guess it's like, let's catch up. How you guys been? We haven't talked in a week, I guess, other than text. We'll text about topics. We'll text about, certain things. There's a big Michael Jordan documentary called The Last Dance airing tonight in the States and at 3 a.m. on Netflix in Canada. We've talked about that. We're not watching that. We're actually recording a podcast. How you guys been?
Doing pretty good. I'm actually very excited about this Jordan doc. Most of the games that they've been playing, replaying, I'm just not that interested. Even the Raptors stuff, I thought it was maybe a little too emotionally tolling to go through, even though I knew the outcome of what the Raptors were going to do. But I haven't watched any of those retro games. But the Jordan stuff, I feel like I really want to. They've been posting a bunch of stuff on Instagram, on the NBA feed, and it looks really good. And I had this memory of, because they were showing the 96 finals, some highlights from that where the Bulls were playing the Supersonics, and I forgot how much I was obsessed with Gary Payton. Has this ever happened to you where there's something from your memory that you have not thought about literally in decades, and then it comes back in your mind, or you see a picture of it, or you see a video, and you go, and your body is filled with this nostalgia and these swelling feelings that bring you right back to that time. I just remember being obsessed with Gary Payton in 1996. I would have been 10 years old, and I was obsessed with his shoe. I can still remember what his shoe looks like.
Oh yeah, did it have the three that really shiny piece on it? It was a black shoe, and it had a triangle, but three bubbles at the corners of the triangle.
The one I'm thinking of had a zipper over top of it. It was like a glove. You know what I'm talking about?
I know that one.
And anyway, it's just funny because I still follow basketball very closely, but I just haven't thought about Gary Payton in, I don't know, a very long time. He retired probably in 2006 or something like that. But now I'm just oh my God, the intense feelings I had for Gary Payton is just something I hadn't thought about in a long time. But it all just came flooding back watching those clips. So I am very excited to see the Michael Jordan doc.
That phenomenon that you're talking about, the idea of seeing something that you've forgotten that you even cared about or knew about or remembered. My brother and I actually have a name for that. Our Opa, our grandpa, had this huge dog when we were kids. It was this beautiful dog named Boomer, and we loved that dog when we were little kids. And for some reason, over the years, I think the dog passed away when we were probably I was probably 9 or 8 or something like that. And then I hadn't thought about the dog. And then years later, I saw a picture, or my Oma brought the dog up, and I was like, holy shit. I was like, that dog meant everything to me when I was a kid. And I completely forgot that dog even existed. So then my brother and I now, in talking about that phenomenon, whether it's someone you went to school with, or, being, loving Gary Payton as a player, something that you've sort of, it's still there in your brain, just waiting to be rediscovered, and then you get flooded with these feelings. But for some reason, you would never think about it unless someone brought up. We call that boomering it. So if I'm oh, Greg, do you remember, I don't name some kid from middle school, Greg would be like, oh man, I totally boomered that guy. And so that's kind of this saying that we have, you boomered Gary Payton. So it was interesting to hear you say that. Anyway,
I feel like OK Boomer has taken over though. Boomer
it's ruined it. It's ruined the word. Yeah, it's ruined it.
It just happened to me. I was in the bathtub, and I was going over the pod topics, and you had extended the pod. Instead of meeting at 8, we met at 8:30, so I had an extra half an hour. And I was trying to think of an album that I really liked, and I couldn't think of it. And then all of a sudden, I just thought of Jagged Little Pill. And I forgot.
Great one.
I forgot how obsessed, and I would listen to it nonstop. I got it on Easter, the Easter Bunny gave it to me. I think I was in grade 7. And it was the only thing I listened to for an entire year of my life. Every song is a classic on that album, in my opinion. And so I listened to it again for the last half an hour, and it just made me feel great. My boss, Randall, was saying that he was watching this Britney Spears music video, and somehow it had a quality to it that made him feel like everything's going to be okay again one day. And I don't know why, but a video from the early 2000s just made him feel like the future is going to be okay. And the Jagged Little Pill album kind of did that to me.
For me though, it doesn't necessarily make me feel okay. It actually kind of brings back some sort of anxieties and just like the chaotic feelings you have as a 10-year-old or just as any age in your youth that you have, it brings me, and I just go, oh, my life feels a little bit more peaceful now, because when I think about Gary Payton, I think about being nervous before a basketball game that I was going to play, or nervous about things that were going on at school. You know what I mean? How that, like, you listen to a piece of music can do that too, where you're like, oh, this is a song from my girlfriend in grade 11 or something like that, and that gives me that anxiety that was associated with that time. So it's weird how it can conjure up not just feelings of good stuff, but also it brings you right back.
Yeah, for me it's like things were okay then, they'll be okay again type of vibe.
Okay, yeah, that makes sense.
Yeah.
So yeah, I think we'll all be tuning into that when it does air. I mean, it's cool because just reading about it, what's so fascinating about this documentary, which I guess what's cool about it is that for 20 years they've been sitting on this footage from the 98 finals, or that season, the last season that Jordan played before he retired. He ultimately came back with the Wizards, but he allowed a documentary crew to just follow the team around, him and the team. And I read this cool piece talking about how it got made. And essentially Adam Silver, who was like the head of NBA entertainment. Do you guys know any of this stuff yet?
Oh, I think you might have told me, but yeah, that's it.
Yeah, I'm just so fascinated in process. And it's like, I guess what happened was, I believe it was like, so Michael Thompson, who played for the Lakers, his son is Klay Thompson. You guys might know him from the Warriors. His brother was like a documentary guy. And so he basically said nobody's ever followed somebody around like in their prime, like someone like Muhammad Ali in their sort of last season. This might be a great opportunity for NBA Entertainment to sort of like embed a crew shooting film with this historic team. So Adam Silver, who's now the commissioner of the NBA, I guess was the head of like NBA Entertainment at the time. He had to go basically to Phil and get like, he was like, do you mind if we follow your team around? I guess Phil was like, I understand, like I respect that you guys are trying to capture history. He sort of understood the need to do it or why it might be beneficial. He said, but you just have to allow me to kick you out if things, you know, I have to have the ability to say get out if you're in the locker room and it's an intense moment or something like that. They said, of course. He goes, but ultimately, like, you're going to have to figure it out with Michael. Michael's the guy that's going to have to say yes or no to this doc. And so I guess Adam Silver has a conversation with Michael Jordan, and he says, we want to follow you around. And Jordan's like, I'm not really feeling that. And Adam said, okay, here's the deal. We'll shoot this footage, but it can never see the light of day, and no one can ever see it unless you also agree to let it go out into the public. Jordan goes, Adam Silver said, and I'm paraphrasing, he said, at the very worst, he goes, you're just going to have an awesome bunch of home movies for your kids that will show this last season and no one else will ever see it. And I guess Jordan goes, okay, cool, fine, as long as I can have this. I guess for the last 20 years, this has kind of been like secret footage that has gone around. People have seen like a weird sort of like hour-long cut of some of the more interesting moments. And Jordan wouldn't even take like meetings basically about this thing. And sort of people are saying that, so these meetings started where Jordan finally took it right after LeBron came back 3-1 against the Warriors. And everyone started saying that LeBron was like, the debate started in kind. And so everybody said, so the producer that did it said that he sat down with Michael the day that the Cavs were doing their parade in downtown Cleveland to celebrate LeBron bringing a championship to Cleveland.
Is that true?
And yeah. And apparently they had the list of docs that this guy had produced. And I guess he gets to the end and Jordan's looking at them and he says, he's like, you guys did the Allen Iverson doc. And apparently the producer was kind of hesitant to say yes or no because he was like, is this a bad thing or a good thing? I don't know. So he goes, yeah. And then Jordan goes, I watched that 3 times. It made me cry. I love that little guy. He goes, let's do it. And then he was willing to work with this producer, the director. And it's been, so when did the Cavs win that? 2016? Yeah. So this has been like 3 years in the making, sort of. That's him agreeing to do it. Then you hire the director. Then you go get all the interviews and all that stuff. But anyway, so I'm really, really excited to see this thing. Eight parts. It'll be very, very
I thought it was 10 parts.
I think it's 8, but you could be right. Don't quote me on 8 or on 10, but I think it's
okay.
8, but you could be right. I think what's interesting too is apparently one of the reasons that it wasn't going to work in the last 20 years is because the way that people consume documentaries, and this gets back to Tiger King or how to Making a Murderer or whatever that doc is, Made in America with OJ. It's like people consume docs way differently now because of those long form sort of like 10-part documentaries. That was the best way to tell this sort of story with the nuance and everything that you need, as opposed to like a 90-minute feature that would just play in a theater that probably would have been how they made it in like 2005 or whatever, 2010, something like that. So anyway, we'll see if people are watching it. Obviously, we're all huge basketball fans, but
it would be funny if it was just a huge piece of shit after all this time. Like there's like Benny Hill music playing and like stupid montages.
Yeah, I'm usually not that into the idea of like these Netflix hangouts, but this is one that I would actually ask the Champagne Boys to do a Netflix hangout so we could all watch it together.
Does that mean we all watch at the same time?
And there's a message board, and we can all talk it. Arkells did it with Indy 88, and we watched basketball, actually. This was like 2 weeks ago. And anybody can, and you basically just like sign up for it, and anybody can enter it. Because I would like to watch it with you guys. That might be kind of fun. Would you guys be into that?
That's a cool idea. That's a really cool idea.
But we have to watch it immediately, because I can't wait more than 2 days.
Okay, fair enough. Okay, we'll see if we can get that on the board soon.
Like maybe tomorrow night?
Yeah, tomorrow night could work. Like tomorrow night at like 9 p.m. or something. That'd be cool.
Yeah. After the kids go to sleep,
I like that.
For Shane and I. You're a little bit easier, Max. You're more fluid.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Well, actually, on that note, a couple thoughts on the Jordan doc. One, it's so interesting that Adam Silver was the guy back in 1996 to orchestrate the whole thing, and it kind of speaks to just his foresight as a thinker and also his ability to gain trust from people, because that's been his sort of greatest accolade as a commissioner, as this getting people to buy in, kind of doing the right thing, and also being trustworthy. No one thinks of Roger Goodell as a trustworthy guy. Would you trust him if he was making a deal with you? If you're a star athlete in the NFL? Probably not. But the fact that Adam Silver has built up this goodwill amongst everybody in the league, I think is really impressive, and he's clearly been doing it for a long time. The other thing I think about sometimes when you hear this Klay Thompson story with Klay Thompson's dad, his brother, and just how connected the league is, it's funny because like I think of myself as like a somewhat connected person. Like, I can text Nick Nurse or Kyle Dubas, and I know a bunch of musicians, but it's just like the level of connection and sort of like circles that Steph Curry has been running in since he was a child is just mind blowing. You know what I mean? It's just like, not only was his dad a player who played with Vince Carter, let alone every other star in the league, he goes on to have his own career. He knows Barack Obama. Like, how many guys? Anyway, I just find that like when someone like Steph Curry or Adam Silver is seemingly really like that well adjusted and just down to earth, despite having rolled in royalty for decades, I just find that to be very impressive and makes me like someone like Steph Curry or Klay Thompson for that much more. Because Klay Thompson's been rolling in NBA royalty since he was a kid as well, because his dad was on the Showtime Lakers.
Even when someone grows up like sort of like with money, like kind of like a significant amount of money, and they live a certain lifestyle, it's always impressive when they sort of embody their own work ethic and their own sort of like drive and need to sort of succeed, because it should be so much easier to sort of live a more leisurely life or just sort of coast from thing to thing and sort of indulging in the pleasures of life because you have this sort of monetary safety net from your parents. Maybe it all depends on how you're brought up, but I'm always sort of impressed because it's like, the amount of work it takes to work on your game to sort of play at the level that a Klay or a Steph plays at. It's like that is so inherent, when it would be easy and probably like 99% of other people would just be like, I'm just going to hang out on the boat and drink beers.
It's like the Tom Hanks's kids. It's like one seems to be like a really hardworking actor and the other is like just want to be a rapper. I shouldn't be, disparaging his name. I don't know if maybe he's a great rapper, but like the rapper guy with the tattoos who like went on Instagram immediately as soon as his dad and mom had COVID. I was like, oh, this seems like the kid who's born into privilege and has no self-awareness whatsoever. And that's almost the more predictable.
Well, did you see at the Golden Globes?
No, what was that?
At the Golden Globes when Tom Hanks got like his Lifetime Achievement Award, Tom goes up and then they keep cutting to the family, and they've got the whole spectrum. Like Tom, he's got all his kids at the table, and Chet's there, and he's kind of like everyone knows he had the rap thing, but Tom's up there and he's like, he's tearing up and he's like, I love my family, I love my kids, I love I couldn't do it without the family, I couldn't do it without his wife. And they cut to the table, and it's like, it's really Tom's moment, and the whole table's sitting there. But then Chet Hayes, the son you're talking about, goes, we love you, Dad. Just in such like but it was like right there in the Gold Globes, like he just yelled it back out at the stage, which was just so funny, and I was just like,
that's fantastic.
Yeah, it was good. It's a good moment. Good moment from Chet Hayes.
Shane, speaking of roommates, you said okay, you had a bath earlier, which is kind of interesting to me. Do you normally have baths?
No, I was okay. So Erica's not here, obviously, and she wasn't feeling well, and then I started getting a chill. And I'm like, something's wrong. I'm not feeling well. I was drinking a lot of water today because, people don't drink enough water.
Tom Brady told us that last week.
Exactly. I'm on this new dieting app called Noom, and it always tells me to drink water. But a byproduct of that is I tend to run a little bit colder now. So I got a hot tea and a bath so I could feel comfortable for this podcast. But then I realized my wife, Alex, had shut the air off, the heat. So our house was like 10 degrees colder than it normally was. So it wasn't just me freaking out or being sick. It was literally the temperature in the house was different. So now I'm feeling a lot better. But yeah, that's why I was having a bath.
Whoa, did you think it was COVID related or something?
No, I thought I was having a panic attack. I had a panic attack yesterday. So
what's the deal?
The reason I had a panic attack was Alex and I stayed up till like 3 a.m. chatting, and my daughter woke up at 5:30, so I had only 2 hours sleep. And then I over-caffeinated myself, and I started kind of freaking out. I started feeling very surreal. And I had to snuggle up with my wife for an hour just while she rubbed my back. Because I'm incapable of napping, so instead of sleeping it off, I just had to like zen out while she rubbed my back. It was pretty weird.
Oh, wow. What were you guys talking about till 3 a.m? What do you possibly have to talk about? You've been quarantined for like 5 weeks. Like, how is this possible? I don't know. This is crazy. That's the craziest part of this whole story, to be honest. I'm not actually even interested in the panic attack. I'm more just interested in like how you and your wife are actually having a conversation till 3 a.m. That blows my mind.
No, it's a great question. The answer is old Seinfeld episodes. But no, I'm kidding. It was, we had a bill that we hadn't been paying for years, literally over 3 years. And every time this bill comes, I always ask Alex about it. I'm like, what is up with this bill? And Alex tells me, oh, don't worry, it's being taken care of. I'm like, okay. So we get the bill, and it's like, almost $2,000. And I'm like, Alex, this isn't getting taken care of. They're not going to keep sending us a bill. Turns out we do have to pay this, and we've incurred 3 years of interest charges. So it was like it started out maybe at like $200, and now it's up to $2,000 over 3 years. But I wasn't mad about the money, but I was just telling her that we got into a big conversation just about when we get a little problem, let's not let it get to such an insurmountable problem. And, it was just, we started talking about everything, but that was kind of the impetus of the conversation. And before I knew it, it was 3 a.m. And then my daughter happened to wake up at 5:30 a.m. It was just this terrible cycle of events that kind of, the next day I was a little bit more stressed out than I would have been otherwise. I don't think it was COVID related, but maybe that was underlying too.
I've told you this, guys. I've become so soft and so coddled that I can't even bear to look at a bill that comes. Oh, sorry, I'll start again.
Yeah, Maxie, you keep dying on us.
Yeah, do you have a better spot in your house? Maybe sometimes I find if people like relocate a little closer to the modem.
I'm like 10 feet from the modem right now. It's like
Can you go on top of the modem?
Can I straddle the modem?
Stick it in your asshole. Yeah.
Let's keep all that in, by the way. I've become so coddled and so soft that I can't even look at a bill. As soon as it comes to my house, I put it like right in this like little satchel, and I bring it right to my accountant's office, and then he just takes care of it all. Like I cannot bear to look at any money, basically.
Even in these COVID times, you just drop off that bill?
No, it's been about 5 weeks. But most of my bills have been redirected to the accountant's place. Like I don't get really much mail at all. It's a good way to live. But I do wonder when things go south, when I have to start doing my own accounting, it's going to be like very hard on my psyche. But the way I justify this though is that I'm an idea guy, and I need to be working with a clear mind and be in a good mood for my ideas to materialize. If I'm stressed out about regular adult stuff, there's no ideas going to come because I'll be worried about paying the bills, right? So I don't know how you guys get any work done because it would be a real problem for me if I had real responsibilities.
Yeah, it is true. I have a lot of trouble with other things weighing on my mind when I'm trying to be creative. I cannot get anything done unless I've done X, Y, and Z first. So it's like I can't start thinking of a commercial unless I've paid all my bills or done this little task or gone to the gym, And
sometimes when you hear about like some prolific, incredible like writer, and you hear stories about their partner going, "Oh, we don't like to disturb him. He needs to be in a good place to work." I get jealous of that. I wish everybody. I mean, I kind of have that already, but like people to treat me like that. She's like, don't disturb him. He's creating works of genius right now. So that's what we're all striving for, I think.
Yeah, you're there, so I'm jealous of you.
Yeah, what's it like? It's like, do you ever think, oh man, what's going to happen if it all ends for me? You know, if I'm not this band guy and I have this charmed existence, like, are you terrified about that proposition?
Oh yeah. It's going to be a steep learning curve that I will not be ready for whatsoever.
Did you guys watch the? I mean, I know we got pod topics, but did you guys watch the concert last night? The big One World thing for the. Anybody got any thoughts? I know it's not on our topics, but Shane had mentioned, he brought it up. He was like, "Are people watching this?" So I thought I'd throw it out there before we got to the actual.
Well, I was just wondering if it was a big deal because for how many celebrities were involved, it didn't seem like anybody was really talking about it. I watched Elton John in his driveway. Apparently, he has a basketball net in his driveway, and then he was singing "I'm Still Standing," but he didn't seem drunk, but it seemed like he was doing it weird. It was like, "I'm still standing," like it was really weird. Did you guys catch that at all?
Yeah, we watched it. Yeah, it was a weird performance for sure, and it was a couple things that were weird about the Elton performances. One, yeah, he was in his driveway, but the basketball, the crummy Canadian Tire $300 basketball net was there, like in the shot directly behind him. Like if you had a sweet basketball net, sure, keep it in there. And if it was like unmovable, keep it in there. But if this is like a thing you could just like wheel out of the shot, like why wouldn't you just do that? You've clearly wheeled a grand piano into your driveway. Like get that thing out of the way. You have this like beautiful.
All I could think about was the ball placement, the two balls placed there, and how his assistants are like, "Oh, this will make you really relatable to like the common man," and like, yes, the shitty net is perfect. Like it was so contrived, I thought.
Yeah, well, I mean, sure, it was contrived, but it was just still a weird move. Yeah, it was interesting to see like each celebrity's production value because you could tell the ones that kind of get it and the ones that like kind of didn't give a shit. And there were some instances where it's like, for instance, I'm a huge Casey Musgraves fan. I think she's like one of the best singer-songwriters of this era. She's like the perfect kind of younger performer to be on this show that has a very wide audience. And it's funny, I relate to her though because she performed this song. Sorry, it's not even a laptop. It's probably her iPhone that's filming it is on top of the piano. And as she's playing the piano part, the piano is so much louder in the mix than her vocal because it's sitting on top of the piano. I know this because we've been doing this Instagram Lives every day. And anytime I do anything at the piano, all I see in the comments is, "We can't hear your voice. We can't hear your voice." And it was the same thing with Casey Musgraves. And so I'm like, okay, sure enough, sure, Casey, you send the thing to the producers, you think you're done. But you think somebody on the production team or her management would be like, "Hey, Casey, what you sent was great, but can you do it again? Because the piano is 3 times as loud as it should be, and we really can't hear your voice right now." But there's a lot of those little moments here at the show where you're wondering, like, do their management... Are these celebrities' management teams so afraid of these artists that they just don't want to tell them no, or the producer is just so like last minute about everything that they have no time to film something again? I was thinking like, I think we touched on this last week, but it's like if this is a thing that's going out to an international audience and there's going to be millions of eyeballs on it, you think they'd try to do something that was a little more impressive on a production level. And you said it yourself, Mike. I've been thinking about that. You're like, John Krasinski in his Some Good News segment is so good because Krasinski is a director and he thinks about every element of the show. And it also got me thinking about YouTubers and how much we've taken them for granted because honestly, YouTubers really know how to pull off a really captivating 3-minute thing that is funny and edited well with literally like 2 cameras. Like I wish the whole show was just YouTubers producing the thing because the old guard kind of fucked it up, I think, to a degree.
It's funny that you mentioned the lighting because I thought amongst the hosts, like with Fallon, Colbert, and Kimmel's lighting and camera was so much better than the other two. Like he actually just looked like it looked good, whereas like Colbert and Jimmy Fallon were just so much sort of like it just looked a lot more DIY, and it was very interesting. So I was like, I wonder if like Kimmel has like he had a crew come in and figure out how to light and just stayed social distancing.
Well, Kimmel's wife is a head writer for his show, I think. I think that's where they met. So there's some showbiz in that household for sure.
Yeah.
What did you think of McCartney going vertical instead of horizontal?
Oh, did he dunk on the Elton John set?
No, I mean, McCartney was like, we're the biggest Beatles fans ever. I love McCartney. But even his performance, it was this kind of weird version of Lady Madonna. I don't know. What do you think?
Oh, well, yeah. I mean, him going vertical was so that they could put the clips of the National Health Service people in the like the black parts of going. He used the iPhone was upright, so then like in a widescreen thing you could put the clips. So like thought was put into that. But the Lady Madonna performance, which was like this slowed down, like jazzy version, and it was kind of supposed to like the whole song Lady Madonna is about how much like that character it works hard and has the baby at her feet and they can't make ends meet, but she sort of presses through, and it's sort of like an homage to women. So I get why he played Lady Madonna, which is normally a very upbeat song. Yeah, I don't know, man. It was a choice. I'm not going to kill McCartney on this podcast right now, but it was fine.
Is his legacy tarnished?
Burn the Beatle records. Yeah. What'd you guys think of Shawn Mendes and Camila Cabello?
I like their performance actually, and he can play piano pretty good too.
His hair looked awesome.
Yeah, It was lit well too. It was like there was a few different edit points. They sing really well together. I thought the song choice at first I was like, interesting, and then I was like, no, actually, you know what? It's I thought it was a nice choice. What a wonderful world.
Who do you think's a bigger prize in that relationship?
I think Sean is.
Yeah, I get that feeling too.
But I bet you Sean's more in love.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess the bigger prize would have to be more in love. The lower prize.
Right.
What do you think, Mike? Who's the bigger prize?
Yeah, I'd say Mendes. Say Mendes. But I mean, the thing is, like when they started, she was more famous than him. You could make the argument about, and I think he's now eclipsed her.
Right. It's like when you fall in love with someone from high school who is very popular and you don't realize you yourself have become like come into yourself.
Exactly. Yeah. That's that dynamic.
Yeah, forever that dynamic will live on for sure, right? What else happened? Oh, I also just think I think we're actually in a pretty good era for late night hosts. I was thinking about this the other day because I think they all occupy a slightly different lane. And I know purists or whatever will be like, Johnny Carson's the guy, or like, there's nothing compared to like Letterman and Leno or whatever. But I think...
How old are these purists?
Nobody's saying Leno, by the
way. Johnny Carson.
Like, I think people growing up that watch Johnny Carson would say Johnny Carson was like the guy. Nobody touches him. Like in the same way people who like were fans of the Celtics in the 60s would like, Bill Russell's the greatest of all time or whatever. Right. But...
of course.
Colbert is amazing and has his own sort of political lane. Kimmel's a little bit more like everyman, but like sneaky smart. Colbert is the more like intellectual. Oh, sorry, I said Colbert already. Fallon is the more like jokey kind of like bit. There's this musical angle to it. Conan, I think you can make an argument that Conan's better than all of them, but he's not even on a network. Corden is like the endearing Brit, but I kind of like them all, like for different reasons. Like I think we're actually in a pretty...
Where is Conan right now?
Conan's at TBS. He's been at TBS for like 10 years or whatever. That's the joke. Is
that not considered a network?
Well, it's not. It's not one of the three.
And like they're like cable. Like it's if you just look at the numbers of how many people watch, Conan's are just people just don't watch TBS, especially for late night shows. It's like it's so minuscule compared, I think, to the other ones. I'm pretty sure that I read a piece about this like a year ago, how far he'd sort of fallen in just viewership. But again, he's doing podcasts now, and he's sort of, I think his online presence still gets a lot of views, but it's just such a huge jump from like NBC or CBS or ABC, which is the three major sort of networks that those guys are on, Colbert, Kimmel, and Fallon, that I think, that's why everybody sort of the post Conan thing was like, just stay, like go back to midnight, let Leno do his thing, and then let Leno leave, and at least you stay on NBC. Instead, he kind of took his ball and went over to TBS, which I totally get. But I think it's like, maybe in the future, sort of like big networks won't be as sort of like important, but it seems like they still are and have been for the last 5 years or whenever the hell that thing happened. Maybe it's a decade ago now. I don't even remember.
Guys, rank the hosts for in your opinion, like 1 to 4, or I guess 1 to 5 if you're including Conan. Just personal favorites. Where would you put him?
For me, Conan, just because he's such a nostalgia act for me. Like I grew up watching him. I would watch his show every single night of my life, and I don't watch those shows anymore. So I'm going to say Conan for that reason.
But who would you put 2, 3, 4, 5?
I'd go Conan 1. I think Kimmel is super talented, so I'd put him 2. I'd put Colbert 3. I'd put Fallon 4. But I really like what all of them do. Like you said, like I think Jimmy Fallon absolutely sort of like has a thing that really is appealing to people, and it's not too heavy. And I know some people knock him for that, like that he doesn't do real interviews and it's all fluff and all that stuff. But I'm like, that's kind of what people want sometimes. They just want to be entertained and have a good time. That would be my 4, and then you can put Corden at 5 if you want. I enjoy him as well. Yeah, I don't think there's any bad hosts, but I will say there's still not a woman host sort of in late night TV. Chelsea Handler was doing it for a bit. Lily Singh's doing like she got the old Carson Daly spot, which is at like 1:30 in the morning or something crazy. But yeah, it's interesting that there's no one in the sort of the rotation there. But yeah, that would be my 5. What would your 5 be, Maxie?
I think I agree with your order exactly. Like it's funny though. I will say that back, I don't know, whatever, 10 years ago with the Colbert Report, I would have put Colbert as like, oh, he'll be my favorite because I think Colbert means the most to me because I watched him a lot through like university, like in the way that Shane would have watched Conan. But now I think it's Conan number 1. Kimmel has just like keeps proving himself. As a guy who's like wickedly funny. I know he's like a Letterman disciple, but he also has got a big heart. I think like tonally, he's able to speak to things in a really funny way. It's like he like what did he say about when he was introducing Paul McCartney last night? He's like, well, this is serious if a Beatles getting involved. Like just like acknowledging.
Or did you see like after J-Lo did her big? I think she did a Barbra Streisand song or whatever, and at the end, J-Lo finishes and she goes, "I miss you." And then it cuts to Kimmel, who's ready to do the next throw, and he goes, "I miss you too, J-Lo." And then he goes on with his bit. But you're right. Like I think the thing about Kimmel that is so good, like I mean, and he was like he really did the Kobe Bryant memorial. He's kind of got this ability, unlike the other ones. Maybe Colbert could probably pull it off to like oscillate between very sort of like heartfelt and emotional that feels sincere, like he does care, and then he could also like snap off a joke where it's like you can't really see Fallon doing like the heavy stuff. Colbert could probably do it. It'd be very weird to see Conan be very serious all of a sudden in a situation where it's like it can't all be joking. Kimmel has that really good ability to sort of toggle back and forth, which is like a hard thing to do.
I feel like Conan does have that ability though.
You think so?
Oh yeah, like how he handled 9/11 and stuff like that. I feel like he's good at that, but
yeah, he could be. I just in an extended thing, like him, like hosting a memorial for Kobe, or like doing like I mean, ultimately last night's marathon there was a lot of joking by the 3 hosts and all that stuff, but also was very heavy and it was interesting. Yeah, I'm probably underselling Conan a bit, but we've seen Kimmel do it a lot.
Yeah, I agree.
Kimmel is also like Mr. LA, even though Conan's lived in LA for a long time. I don't associate Conan with LA because I think was this show in New York when he was on NBC. Yeah. So like Kimmel feels like the guy who like when a team wins a championship, they go on Kimmel. Well, I guess the Lakers specifically, or any of the showbiz stuff. Kimmel feels very connected to. He's also spoken out about gun violence in a really thoughtful way. But I was thinking about Conan. Conan kind of reminds me of, this is like an example in my life, of like an artist like Joel Plaskett, where Plaskett maybe like doesn't sell as many tickets as Arkells does or other sort of more contemporary bands, but all the contemporary bands look up to Conan. Because I think like Kimmel, Colbert, all those guys go, oh, like Conan, like that guy is working on like a slightly different level. And that's the way I feel about Plaskett, for instance. Like Plaskett's like maybe not as popular as Arkells, but we all know that like Plaskett's the GOAT. You know what I mean? Like I feel like Conan has that reverence about him in that community.
No, I'd agree with that.
Yeah, that's a good comp. Well, man, this was a long way around to get into some topics, dudes.
That's your way of saying you guys weren't that interested in the topics, but that's okay.
Well, it was just 45 minutes of technical issues and 5 minutes of content.
All right. Do you want, Maxie boy? Are you feeling this New York Times article? Do you want to jump to some puddle of mud, or do you want to do the New York Times?
Because that article was about you, right, Max?
Well, I wasn't even that sold on the why. Why do you say that?
Isn't the article just about like people being too soft?
Oh, coddled. You said you've been coddled.
Explain the article, Mike, and we can touch on it briefly. We'll see if it goes anywhere.
Yeah, let's do it. All right. So there's this piece in the New York Times that I guess has caused a bit of controversy. There's been some backlash from younger people, from millennials. But this guy, David Brooks, who's an opinion columnist, headline: "The age of coddling is over. Learning what hardship has to teach us." And so, like, through the prism of COVID, he basically sort of posits that young people are having such a hard time dealing with adversity because they've been coddled their whole lives. And that doesn't prepare them for when actual real shit hits the fan. That's sort of the piece. But then he kind of goes into a more interesting thing where he says the reason that medical professionals are actually so good in these moments is because medical school is so hard and you are basically not coddled. You basically have to prove that you can sort of like act under duress in the most stressful situations and still stay cool. He's like, everybody should sort of have to go through that. But he compares it to the great generation in the past and older people. So a lot of people are kind of looking at this thing and saying, okay, boomer. So that's kind of the angle of the piece. So yeah, I mean, do you guys agree with the sentiment that the younger generation is coddled and that's why they're struggling with COVID, which seems like a weird thing because I think everybody's fucking struggling with the current situation, just like we would if there was a fucking World War III. It's like, this is so weird and unprecedented. This isn't like snowflakes getting hurt. You know, it's like, it's a weird time for him to bring up the "we shouldn't have gave out participation trophies" argument. It's like, because this is just so fucking extreme. But yeah, what were your guys' thoughts on the New York Times piece? Do you want to start, Maxie?
Yeah, well, I mean, a couple things come to mind. One, I think there's a few things that can be true at the same time. One, I think that, like, sure, can we look at the mental fortitude of medical professionals and doctors and nurses and learn something from them? Can everybody stand to do that? Especially seeing how, like, they are the bedrock of our communities and are guiding us along right now. Yes, I think that is completely fair and valid. And if we've gotten away from sort of like institutional strictness when it comes to like your line of work and how seriously we need to take it and how we all need to be team players and put our egos aside and put our own sense of celebrity aside, I think that's great. Do I think that like the okay boomer thing is kind of like unnecessary? Yes, I think it's unnecessary. I think that the modern generation has its own problems for sure, that they're different problems than the boomers had. I also think that the headline probably, and this is a thing that's happening more with social media, is that the headline for the piece is maybe the most offensive thing. If you actually read the body of the piece, I don't think anybody really disagrees with what he's saying, but it got me thinking about just the way ideas are presented and how these online debates happen and the outrage that comes from it is largely to do with what the headline is and who is delivering the message. Yeah, and I just thought it was an interesting, because it was trending, and David Brooks is a guy who's a bit of a lightning rod for people on the left who just go, this is a conservative guy who's like completely out of touch, even though I think he often has like some pretty like interesting philosophical insights into like how we build communities. But I read him pretty regularly. But Shane, what did you think?
So wait, are you saying if Obama had written that and the title of it was like some advice for a younger generation, it would have gone over fine?
No, that's exactly my point. I think if Obama had written the same piece, he would have organized it a little differently, and he would have had a different headline. The headline wouldn't have been, what was the headline again? The headline is "The Age of Coddling is Over." It wouldn't have been that. It would have been "What we can learn from our medical heroes." If that's the headline of the piece, and then the rest of the body is exactly the same, I don't think anybody's talking about it. I think people go, oh, okay, that's interesting. Maybe he removes a couple of the a couple paragraphs about how kids these days are a little too coddled, but it just gets to the heart of it, which is just like med school is intrinsically hard and sometimes harder than it needs to be, but it trains people to work at a very high level amid incredible stress. Like those are good lessons. I don't think anybody would disagree with that. So I've just been thinking about like the way arguments are presented right now. So do you guys watch Bill Maher, by the way?
I have.
No.
Do you like Bill Maher?
I've watched him in the past on Politically Incorrect, but that's where it ended.
So he had this piece that was shared by Sam Harris. It was like a 5-minute rant that he did from home. It was like an at-home version of a show, where basically he said the sort of culture police warriors are saying we can't call the virus the Chinese virus He's like, despite the fact that a lot of other viruses are named from the places they started, but right now it's inappropriate to call it the Chinese virus because it's xenophobic, et cetera, et cetera. And like, his point was sort of interesting in that it's like, if this is a problem that keeps reoccurring when it comes to these diseases spreading, and there's a country that maybe isn't doing its part in limiting that, we should be able to hold them responsible in a productive way. I think that point is fine, and a constructive, like, medically based argument should be made to have that conversation. But my problem with Mar is that he's such an asshole about it, where he's like, with all you liberal snowflakes don't see the point. If I can't have this conversation, you're the problem, blah, 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 blah. And it's just like, okay, you're such an asshole that it's going to turn off a lot of people's brains when you start talking like that. Like, people are just not going to listen to you. So I don't know. I'm just like always interested in like, who is the best communicator of ideas to actually get shit done. And I think Mar, despite the fact that I agree with like a lot of the things he said, like a lot of the ideas he has, the tone and the style in which he presents it makes me kind of hate the guy. And actually, I think he makes the overall problem kind of worse because people just get so pissed off at him and shut down as a result. But yeah, I don't know. Yeah. Do you guys have like anybody in mind who like communicates ideas well or communicates ideas badly, but you agree with? Like Sam Harris is maybe a good example. I don't know.
The problem is you don't really want to say those people, or else there's a bunch of backlash that comes at you. It's like such a conundrum. Shane likes Jordan Peterson.
I'm setting you up right now,
like,
Shane.
it's like hard to. That would be the headline, right?
Yeah.
That's going to be the title of this episode, by the way.
But I can't help but feel like everyone older than me is old and out of touch, and everyone younger than me doesn't work hard enough.
So you're in the perfect zone.
But I know that's not true, but it's like my emotional feelings always like, these millennials.
Yeah.
Like, what do you think, Mike?
I mean, I think we're all soft and we're all tough at times. Like, it's like, you know, like my whole thing is it's like, there's kind of I approach things in there's three sort of angles. It's like what this group of people think, it's like what this side thinks, what the opposing side thinks, and then how I feel after ingesting both of those things. And to Max's point, I think delivery matters. I think, you know, sort of like the way that the message is delivered ends up just sort of like, I think affecting the outcome a lot more than maybe even the message. So yeah, I don't know. Like, it's like, do I think that, like, when I read that piece, to Max's point, I'm like, the language is like, okay, I've heard this like so many times, like participation trophies and kids are coddled and all that stuff. And then my argument back to that, or my thoughts on that, are like, well, yeah, because we're trying to like sort of like raise a generation of like people that want to, you know, sort of engage in their community, that are well adjusted, because there was this whole generation of people whose fathers didn't fucking talk to them, and they grew up and they were all weird and they were damaged and they couldn't share their emotions with their partners, and they didn't raise their kids right because they were like, well, my father didn't speak to me, or my mother was emotionally absent, you know. So what happens is all those kids that grew up in those situations are like, no, I'm going to be a different parent, like, you know. And they're always like, oh, you can't be your kid's friend, you have to be their damn parent. It's like, but there might be a middle ground where you don't sort of like ruin your kid by like withholding your emotions. Instead, you sort of like tell them that they are great. And then the idea is that we sort of all as a society grow into this better place where we're all kinder to one another, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. That being said, I get the argument that like the world is a cruel place and it's not fair, and that you might get a shitty boss that does not give a crap, or you might, you know, you might get a curveball that all of a sudden is very hard to deal with because you've had a really good sort of existence for 23 years and then you're not prepared. Whereas if you're somebody that's maybe had you've had a few losses through your teens, and you know what it's like, and that the world can be a bit tough. Yeah, maybe it's easier to sort of like take bad news, or when bad things happen to you as you get into your 20s or your 30s. I get both sides. So to me, I'm like, yeah, millennials are soft, but they're going to learn, you know, and I don't think it's a bad thing that like they were raised by parents that just wanted to do better. And it's like, do I think that people older than us are tough? It's like, yeah, I do. And I think it's because they probably had a tougher upbringing, which is like in some ways unfortunate, but yeah, it probably did prepare them for like a cruel world. So it's like, I don't know. I always err on the side of let's try and get to a better place in society. Like, I don't know how you can go wrong doing that instead of just sort of sitting back when things go bad and being like, well, you weren't prepared. I knew things were going to be shitty anyway. You should have prepared yourself. So that's where I stand. I don't know if that answered the question.
Isn't the idea though that boomers had everything handed to them, like jobs require a university education, they were able to get when you didn't need a university education? So it's like boomers kind of got everything handed to them, and millennials want everything handed to them.
Well, yeah.
Isn't that kind of like the stereotype?
No, yeah. That's the sort of main angle, is that basically like the boomers are sitting on a perch basically saying, work harder and you can achieve your dreams. But the millennials know that that's a disingenuous argument, that it's bullshit, because it's like, actually the world was way different 30 years ago or 40 years ago when you bought a home, basically working, a job that paid you a more than a living salary and all that. And the world has changed since then. So it's not an equal playing field. So that is a major, major part of the argument for sure.
Yet the stereotypical millennial would want or expect maybe something without working as hard. Right? That would be the stereotype.
That'd be the stereotype.
Yeah.
What do you think, Max? Do you think the younger generation? What are your thoughts on both sides of the divide, in the extremes?
I don't know. I think there's like advantages and disadvantages that each party's had, right? So it's like, sure, like boomers could buy houses, and they were affordable. Like things like the cost of living seemed to be not so expensive, and it was like a simpler time in that way. And I don't know. I just think like everybody has their things that were hard, and everybody has their things that were a little easier, like each generation. So I don't know.
We were in the perfect pocket, don't you agree? Like we were in that sweet spot of we got a little touch of this, a little touch of that.
Yeah, there were still some jobs when we were coming, of age and all that stuff. Like we kind of got in under the last bit where it was like, yeah, I agree. I mean, from our point of view, it seemed like it worked out where it's like we kind of occupy both spaces. Do you know what I mean? Like it's like we kind of have these career jobs that might not be so readily available to the people that are coming up under us, which is why I think all of us are trying to be generous with opportunities or advice and stuff like that as much as you can give it, but everything's so circumstantial. But then we kind of like, I think we're sort of like enlightened in a way that maybe like the generation ahead of us wasn't so lucky to sort of be, they kind of went, I don't know, like, yeah, I think for me, it's been a good pocket to sort of occupy, because I feel like we can see the people that came before and that we can see the people coming behind. And there's almost a healthy sort of like feeling. Like it's kind of weird to remember pre-internet, because so many people, a lot of our listeners probably don't even remember a time where there wasn't the internet. You know what I mean? Like,
well, you went through all of elementary school without having internet, right?
I did, yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah, computers in middle school was when we started doing computers.
I didn't get an internet connection till grade 7. So I would assume for you that would be grade 9, right? Like that's when you had your first dial-up connection.
Yeah, for sure. And we used to have, my mom would want to talk on the phone, and then Greg and I would be like, Mom, we want to use the internet. Be like, and then we'd be downloading like a Weezer song on Napster or some shit.
But anyway, that was a bit of a digression. But what's the next topic, unless we want to talk about this more?
No, we went deep, man. We might have to ditch the listener questions tonight. Well, Maxie, did you want to talk about Pitchfork giving Fiona Apple's new album a perfect 10?
Well, I did. Well, I thought it was kind of interesting because they only give out the only other 10 they've given out in like the last 10 years is Kanye's album, Beautiful Fantasy, I think.
Wow.
My Dark, Twisted, whatever. But I was just more interested in that idea of giving a piece of art a perfect score. I also just kind of find it interesting that like it's really just one writer at Pitchfork that goes, I think this is my favorite record of all time. And then like it's an awesome win for Fiona because that one writer that was assigned to her album happens to love it and love Fiona. It's like now it's like the score for Pitchfork as an entire publication, and that's many, many people that work there, and it's a publication that means a lot in the music world. It'll forever be a perfect 10, one of the only 10s that's ever existed. But anyway, I was just thinking about like what are other pieces of art that you would give a perfect 10 to, whether that's a movie or a TV show or an album or just a piece of art, because there's something interesting about like a flawless album. Shane, let's start with you.
Yeah, I already said mine.
Oh,
Jagged Little Pill, baby.
What's your favorite? But you're a movie guy. And what's your favorite movie? Like, is there any movies you'd give a 10?
I really love Bottle Rocket. I really love Rushmore. I really love Swingers. I really love Jerry Maguire. Trying to think of another movie. I really love There Will Be Blood. like all P.T. Anderson's movies. I really like Punch Drunk Love. I really like these are all like, to me, they're 10s.
Oh, so those are all 10s.
Yeah.
Interesting.
And Boogie Nights, of course, is probably a 10 to a lot of people. That might be a perfect 10 movie to. That might be the one I say, Boogie Nights, for now.
Are all these movies that you've like watched lots of times?
Rushmore probably I've watched more than any other film. Like I went through a phase where I watched it every night.
Oh wow!
So yeah, I was really, really into it. What about you? What about you?
I can think more specifically like albums. I mean, there's a bunch of Beatles albums that are like kind of 10 across the board. Like Rubber Soul and Revolver, I think, stick out. Where there's like actually
Revolver's a 10 for you. Wow.
But there's no bad songs? Like, is it 10? Does a 10 mean no bad songs?
Yeah, it just means the perfect album to you.
Yeah, to me, Rubber Soul, I think, is a 10.
Yeah, I think Rubber Soul. Actually, there's one of those like George like East Indian songs that I don't love on or with or without you on Revolver.
Yep.
So maybe Revolver's a 9.8. But I think Rubber Soul's a 10. Abbey Road's a 10 for sure. Let It Be 9.8. Sgt. Pepper's is maybe a 10. Help is probably 9.6. They're all like 9.5 or above, basically. But an album like I mentioned Plaskett earlier, like Joel Plaskett, Truthfully. I just have so many memories listening to that album, and it happened at a pivotal time. Actually, I think Shane, all those movies you mentioned. How old were you when those movies came out? Were they all like between like 15 and 23 kind of thing?
Yeah.
Yeah, so I think
Rushmore came out at the perfect time. It was when I was all fucking up in school but still had creative aspirations, and so I was like 15 and it was about a 15-year-old. So that was like right on the money.
Mike, do you have any perfect 10?
Yeah, I think the most recent perfect 10 movie I saw where I walked out and I was like, that's a perfect movie. And then even when I rewatched it in subsequent watchings, I was like, yep, my brain wasn't playing tricks on me. It wasn't like just a theater experience. That movie's pretty much a 10. Was Get Out, the Jordan Peele film. I thought that was like a 10 easily for me. And then a 10 album I can think of, like just like when I listen to it, like Shane was talking about Jagged Little Pill, the Blue Album by Weezer. Just like, again, it's like that it hit me at the right age. Every song on that record to me is like an amazing song. It brings me so much joy just to listen to that record. I think that's like that's a 10 for me. Yeah. So those are two 10s for sure for Mikey V.
This feels like it was more of a listener mailbag kind of question, you know?
It really did. Yeah. Yeah.
Maybe we go to the next one, which I stole from Shane because this was going to be the final topic.
Just because I laughed so hard watching this clip.
I also love
this. Is so funny.
I don't know how would it have been a Shane surprise without us all seeing the clip? Would it have you just would have asked us if we'd seen it?
I was going to have the clip in my app.
Oh, amazing.
Because like how I did for the WWE wrestling thing.
Well, one of the beauties of this, and the clip we're talking about, listeners, is the band Puddle of Mud, I guess a couple years ago, had done like a some sort of radio acoustic performance, and they decided to cover About a Girl by Nirvana. I had never seen this clip. I guess recently it resurfaced, and everybody's, having a good laugh at Puddle of Mud's expense on the internet. But part of the joy of this isn't just the performance, like the singing, like the audio of it, which is its own thing. But his face, like the fucking, like visually watching it as he sort of screeches through this homage to Kurt Cobain. Oh man, it is something. How did you guys come across it?
It made the rounds on Twitter. Puddle of Mud's always been one of those bands that is like socially acceptable just to openly make fun of.
Yeah.
Because they kind of have this kind of like white trash kind of like middle America thing that people like to make fun of, I suppose. And yeah, I think I'm looking at the YouTube right now, and I think somebody just re-uploaded it because I wonder how long ago they does anyone know the actual performance date?
No.
But yeah, I just saw it on Twitter. Like a music critic, Stephen Hayden, that I follow on Twitter, was like gave it a perfect 10. Actually, I think it was the same day the Fiona album came out.
But like, do you think while he was doing it, he thought it sounded good. Like I'm sure this has happened to you, Max, where maybe you've had a performance that went over like gangbusters, and then you've gone back to listen to it, and you're like, ugh, this doesn't sound as good.
The reason why I was so uncomfortable watching it, because I related to what he was going through so much. Because what happens is most of the time when you get these like acoustic sessions brought to you, it's like you're doing a day of press. You're in New York City. He's at the Sirius XM studios. So he's probably going to do 6 of these over the course of the day. You're throwing your shit into a cab. You're going from one studio to the next. You're waking up at like 6 a.m. And you probably had a show the night before, or I don't know what this guy's relationship is with alcohol. You could be hungover, and you just like, even on a good day, even if you got like a full night's sleep, performing a song like that where you have to sing really loudly is like hard enough. And if you're operating on, less than ideal amount of sleep and maybe you're hungover, it's incredibly hard. And as a result, our Kells have started to change the key of the song. So for instance, knocking at the door, which requires like that's me, like a real vocal performance, that would be like, similar to like a Kurt Cobain screamy kind of thing. It's normally an E minor, the recorded version. But when we were doing these like 7 a.m. radio interviews where we'd have to play the song, we drop it 5 keys. So like a whole 5 keys is significant, which would change the whole tenor of the song, but it will allow sleepy ass Max a chance to sing it nicely and warmly and kind of quietly, so the complexion of the song would change. So when I was watching him sing it, I'd be like, oh my God, like this guy clearly is going for like the 11 p.m. rock and roll sold out club version of the song, but he has to perform it at 7 a.m. hungover as fuck with his drummer playing the fucking djembe or whatever it's called. I'm like, what a nightmare. And it brought me back specifically to a session that we did. Well, what I want to ask you guys about this was, like, have you guys had to do anything really hungover and like have to perform in front of cameras and lights or a meeting or whatever when you weren't at your best? And it reminded me of a thing we did when High Noon came out, and it was a real good lesson for me because we were supposed to perform these songs acoustically. I think the whole band was going to be there, and there was like a bunch of camera people and lighting guys that were kind of like making this like moody set for us. And I was like so hungover, and I was like, am I going to throw up? Am I going to throw up? And then halfway through the song, I was like, guys, sorry, I have to go to the bathroom. I would go down the hall, I throw up in the bathroom, and I am like, the odd time I've had to throw up, it's not a quiet one. Like I'm like, ah! And then I come back to set. Nobody says anything. We carry on. I'm feeling like mildly better. It's all done. We're in the car back. I'm like, hey Nick, did anybody hear me in the bathroom there? And Nick's like, oh yeah, everybody could hear every single thing you did. And it's actually on the internet too. It's a black and white thing if you search like Arkells Vivo on YouTube. But if you look in my eyes, I'm just like a dead person. But anyway, it was a lesson for me because I was like, I'm never going to do that ever again. And from now on, if I have to be sharp in the morning, I'm pretty good about like calling it early and getting a good night's sleep. Because and it also affects your voice if you're out drinking and at a bar talking to people till 3 a.m. Mike, do you have any stories like that?
No, not that I can recall. Like in the band days, for sure, we had to, when we were like touring, like we did a couple of those radio hits in the morning, and I wish we were clever enough to figure out the big key drop, because I would just try to let it rip acoustically, and it was always very like, you're just straining your voice, and you're so sort of exposed with an acoustic guitar. You don't have anything to sort of to cover it up, and it's so early. So a couple of those, which were always like afterward, I'd be like, oh, why did we even do that? That was more embarrassing than, I don't think anyone's going to go and buy our record after listening to that acoustic performance on Calgary 10 whatever. But I can't think of anything in particular that like I was like, oh man.
But Mike, you do pitch meetings though, like the odd pitch meeting. You won't be your best self, but you can kind of perform. Like you're better at being a hungover thinker than most, I think.
Yeah, I can operate that way.
Shane, you can speak to this because you guys work together.
Yeah, Mike can turn it on very, very well. I'm never worried about him, even if he's like very out of sorts before the meeting. He's very in sorts, or one of the better performers during the meeting. So, yeah, I don't worry about Mike.
What about you, Shaney boy?
Not, yeah. Oh, geez. I've had some terrible days at work being hungover, but I'm more the type maybe to get drunk and ruin something than actually the next day when I'm hungover. So thinking of that, like I probably have a million things to say, but something I can actually say on this podcast would be Mike asked me to perform. Like, I don't think it's a secret. I was a rapper in my youth. So Mike asked me to join him on stage for a New Year's Eve performance at Absinthe, which was our old stomping grounds. And it was kind of a song I wasn't that familiar with, so I had to learn lyrics or like augment lyrics that I already had that existed. And I thought it would relax me if I got drunk for the performance. But then when I got on stage and it was my turn to start rapping, I forgot every lyric and my mind went completely blank. And I couldn't say anything into the microphone, so I just kind of danced around and then meandered off the stage and just tried to like.
I had to, and once I realized he froze, and then we did like 4 bars waiting for him to jump in, and then he didn't. And then so I was like, we were just standing there, just repeating the same 4 bars. I started rapping the fucking theme song to Fresh Prince just to fill the time. And then I looked to my right, and then Shane was walking off the stage with the beer in his hand, and he just kind of put the microphone back into the stand and walked away. That's funny though. That was good times. That was like 2011, 2010.
Yeah. And it was hard because it was New Year's Eve, there was so much pressure to drink, and there was nothing that was going to stop me from being hammered at like 10 when we had to perform. Like in hindsight, I wouldn't do that now. I'd be so nervous about the performance. I would just make sure I had mastered it before I got on stage, and then, release the release valve after the performance and just got hammered. But,
ignorance
of youth.
Do you want to stop it there, and then we'll hit the music?
Ignorance of youth, and then the music will kick in. Cool.
That's funny. The worst line ever. All right.